Thank you for joining us today for guided meditation to be led by Aparna Sadananda. I am Donna Jonte, Head of Experiential Learning at the Phillips Collection. Our weekly meditations reflect the mission of the museum. The Phillips was founded in 1921 as a direct result of another pandemic. Founder Duncan Phillips lost his brother James to influenza in 1918. In his grief, Duncan said that he turned to his love of art for the will to live. He, his wife Marjorie, and his mother opened their art-filled home in DuPont Circle as the Phillips Memorial Gallery, intending the collection to be joy-giving and life-affirming, and the museum to be a beneficent force in the community. Each week, our meditation is inspired by a work of art from the collection or on view in a special exhibition. Today, our inspiration is a work by Giuseppe De Nittis called Snow Effect, painted around 1880, and it is on view in the special exhibition called An Italian Impressionist in Paris, Giuseppe De Nittis. I hope some of you have seen this gorgeous show, or if not, can come before it closes in a month. Phillips Curator meditation. She will talk about the artist, his life, his relationship to Impressionism and Japanism. The curator, the guest curator of the exhibition, Renato Miracco, is with us also in the audience here today, and I think he would be happy to answer questions after Sue's spotlight talk. Now I would like to introduce Aparna, and we will begin our meditation. Aparna comes to mindfulness. Hi, Aparna. Comes to mindfulness from a science background. She holds a PhD in cellular neuroscience from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, India. She's a senior teacher and trainer at Yoga District here in Washington, DC. She is also an artist specializing in Indian folk art. She's also trained in music in Indian forms of singing. We are so fortunate to be guided by a teacher with a profound understanding of art and science and mind and body. So thank you, Aparna, for guiding us today and every Wednesday in meditation.
Thank you so much, Donna. Namaste to you and namaste to everybody. Welcome to our guest curator for this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to hold this space. And particularly today's artwork, I feel, connects so beautifully with our last week's work in time. When I think about the timing of these two paintings, that is the Luncheon of the Boarding Party by Renova and today's artwork, Snow Effect by Giuseppe De Nittis, it's almost magical sort of a feeling to imagine that both these artists were doing these works at about the same time in different places in the world. And how beautifully this work today speaks to the weather that we are in. And it is some of the aspects of these, of this painting that will inspire our practice today. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share with you all a picture of Snow Effect. I'll share a few details about it, and then I'll come back to what is the outline for our practice today. Let's go ahead and take our first look at Giuseppe De Nittis' Snow Effect. It's a very small painting compared to many other paintings that we may have seen in the past, in that it is only 54 by 73 centimeters in its dimensions. And in such a small space, relatively, it's amazing to see how many details the artist has captured. So in our practice today, we will be first centering our attention, and then we will closely look at this work. We will slow down enough our attention, our gaze, so we can appreciate the nuances of this work. And then when that will be complete, we will go into a practice of breathing. Actually, two practices of breathing that are inspired by some of the facets of this work. So if you're ready to come with me on this journey towards meditation and art, please find your comfortable meditation posture. What I mean by that, it always helps to feel grounded through our feet. So your feet could touch the floor, or you may place something under your feet. It also helps to have your back a little supported, like you may place a pillow behind your back. So you don't have to always think about sitting upright. And then grounding the body, lengthen the body, like your crown is reaching towards the sky. There's that space between the vertebrae of the spine, of the backbone. Palms comfortably resting on your knees or thighs. And you may just close your eyes for a moment. Like you're symbolically turning your attention, turning your senses inwards. And then you may continue with your eyes closed, or you may lower your gaze, or simply gaze at something in front of you without analyzing it. And when we're transitioning from where we were, what we were doing, to where we are now, it always helps to take that one nourishing breath, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. You're breathing in here, breathing out in the now. Let's take a few more breaths to help us arrive into each moment as it happens. And now we'll go on to deepen this awareness of being here now by bringing awareness to each part of the body and the sensations that are unfolding in each part of the body. Let's start by bringing awareness to the sensations in our hands. Notice all the sensations in your hands, and if there are none, just observe that. Then notice the inner volume of your hands, the canvas on which these sensations are coloring your perception of the hands, the inner volume. And then combining these two layers of awareness, of sensations and space, try to bring attention to your hands. Like if you couldn't see or move your hands, can you still feel and attune to their presence through these sensations and awareness of their inner volume? And we'll go on to mirror the same process of awareness into our forearms, elbows, upper arms, Both arms all at once. Shoulders. Chest. Waist. Upper back. Lower back. The hips. The entire torso. Torso and both arms all at once. The thighs. The knees. Shins and calves. The lower legs or the shins and calves. And then your feet. Both legs all at once. The neck. The face. The entire body all at once. Maybe attune to all the sensations within this body, within the field of this body, all at once. Additionally, we may observe any emotions, any pressing thoughts that are happening in the mind without analyzing them. When we have attuned to the living presence that we hold in the space where we are, we could gently open the eyes and keeping the gaze relaxed. Like instead of reaching with our eyes towards the painting, let the painting's colors and details reach out to our eyes. As we begin this journey of slowing down and closely examining Giuseppe De Nittis' snow effect. We'll zoom in a bit. And in silence for about a minute, just allow your eyes to scan through. When you put together these visual details that you just observed and the title of this work, Snow Effect, what story does it create in your mind? Does it make you wonder why this woman is sitting here? What this place could be? Anything that really stirs your imagination, just become aware of that. when that is complete, let's pay a little more attention to the environment in this painting. And from the clothes of the person here, it suggests that the weather could have been a little wet because she's having this umbrella. And there are these flecks of snow right behind her, and some even on her dress. So if we imagine sitting in a cold place, a cold, wet weather day outdoors like her, can you just imagine the sensations that you would feel besides the fact that you would feel cold? In fact, let us become this person. So feel free to sit the way she is sitting. Maybe close your eyes and imagine sitting in a similar place on a cold, wet, snowy day. As you imagine to be this person in the painting, are there any sensations that you feel in your body? And what does this feeling, this knowledge through feeling, inform you about the inner state of this person? And that is complete. Temporarily pause looking at our screens, and we'll go on to practice certain specific breathing techniques to keep us warm in colder weather. So to practice this, you could bring your palms around your abdomen, like on the sides of your abdomen. Breathe in, allowing the abdomen to expand all 360 degrees. As you breathe out, gently draw the belly in. Imagine a vortex, sort of a force drawing the belly towards the spine. And that vortex funneling out as you inhale again. Vortex absorbing the abdomen to the back as you exhale. Inhaling expansion. Exhaling integration inwards. Practice this for about 10 to 15 breaths. And when we become familiar with this kind of specific awareness of the abdomen as we breathe, we're going to do it faster. So it becomes similar to a technique called Bhastrika breathing or the bellows breathing. So do the same breathing you've been doing a little faster, like relax. Suspend all efforts just for about 10 seconds or so. And notice the warmth that you might be building up in your body from the torso. You could also visualize this energy that is being kindled through your Bhastrika-like breathing as a ball of light in the abdomen that is nourished as you inhale. And as you breathe out and contract the abdominal muscles, you may imagine this light being pumped up and down and in all directions of your body. So eventually, you could sense this energy as light and warmth filling up your whole body. Let's practice with this awareness for about a minute. Now, as we continue this breathing technique, just focus on the upward rise of this energy, this fiery kind of energy, and try to bring your awareness of that fire, that warmth or flame here to your third eye. So it's like each exhale, you're pumping up that light all the way to the third eye. And this directional guidance of your awareness and the warm, fiery energy to the third eye, let it be like this person's gaze. She's channelizing all of her energy and focusing it to the thoughts, while her gaze is to the bird's eye view of the scenery beneath her. The scenery beneath the clouds, the birds, as you focus your attention in this way while sitting like her, what do you feel? And how is that informing you of the inner state of the person here? When that is complete, we'll go on to our final breathing technique to bring another layer of awareness and understanding of this painting. We'll do a technique called alternate nostril breathing or Nadi Shodhana. Do this, curl your index and middle fingers You're using your right hand to do this hand gesture or mudra. You press the thumb to the right side of the nose. So you inhale through the left nostril. Close the left, exhale through the right. Inhale through right. Close and exhale through the left. Now on each inhale, as you raise your breath, imagine you're raising your breath to the third eye space. And do this breathing for about a minute. If you're practicing the alternate nostril breathing, you may want to conclude your practice after exhaling through the left nostril, like integrating the two halves of your nose and breathing, like integrating the two halves of duality here at the third eye. Can we integrate our perspective of life, this moment of this day? So we may see it like a bird's eye view, just like this person in the painting. Now with this background, as you look at the work, what are your thoughts? How has this practice of engaging mindfully with the art and through the breath shaped your own inner awareness? We'll check in, and when that is complete, maybe close today's practice by joining palms in prayer. First, bowing and honoring the light right here within ourselves. May we bow to the light of teachings of yoga and the teachers who preserved the wisdom in these teachings since ancient times. May we bow to the creative energy of the artist Giuseppe De Nittis that spoke to us through this painting, Snow Effect, and inspired us in our inward journey today. May we thank all the forces that brought this painting to us today. And finally, may we bow to each other. Like we're saying, the light in me honors the light in you. Thank you so much for choosing to share your presence and practice with me. I hope this practice was useful to you. Please do take your time to share your thoughts, your questions for me, for Donna, for Sue in the chat. Once again, thank you so much. Peace be to all.
Thank you, Aparna, for helping us think about duality and unity and all the different perspectives we take as we explore our relationship to this complicated world. And thanks to all of you for posting your thoughts and your questions in the chat. Fascinating. We will address your thoughts after Sue's spotlight talk. So thank you so much. I hope you can stay for Sue's talk and to meet Renato Miracco, the guest curator. And One of our colleagues from the National Museum of Asian Art, Demi Mohammed, is here too, and she'll have a chance to tell us briefly about two upcoming programs for our collaboration celebrating De Nittis. So now I would like to introduce Sue Frank, and we can begin our spotlight. And if we can spotlight Sue next to me so you can see Sue too, that would be great. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Alani. My colleague Sue Frank is a curator at the Phillips Collection, and she specializes in European and American modernism. She earned her PhD in 1996 with an award-winning dissertation on film, the films of Dali and Buñuel. And she joined the Phillips Education Department just after she finished that dissertation. But then she left us and quickly moved to the curatorial department. And I'm so thankful that Sue is still willing to work with us in education and share her deep insights into the Phillips itself and to modernism. Over the last decade, Sue has made permanent collection-related shows a significant part of her portfolio. She's been very active, curating exhibitions that showcase the museum's European and American collections for international audiences in Italy, Spain, Germany, Japan, South Korea, as well as for audiences here, domestic audiences. She has lectured widely and published several books, including American Impressionist Painters of Light and the Modern Landscape, David Smith Invents, and Made in the USA, American Art from the Phillips Collection. And some of you may have seen those beautiful shows at the Phillips Collection. Sue is co-editor of the 2021 exhibition catalog, Picasso, Painting the Blue Period, which accompanied the exhibition of the same name that she co-organized with the Art Gallery of Ontario, Canada, just last spring. That show in December was named one of the top 10 exhibitions of 2022 by the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. And I imagine that the De Nittis show currently on view will also receive similar accolades. So thank you so much, Sue, for being here with us today to tell us more about this Italian Impressionist and his relationship to Japanism and to us. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Donna, for introducing me. It was very generous and thoughtful. And, you know, my years in the education department at the Phillips were formative ones for me. And so you and I have overlapped for a long time. And, you know, it's a pleasure to be able to step back into the education department and do a spotlight program like this. And I want to thank Aparna because she gave such interesting opportunities to go and look at this painting and think about it. I was reading things in the chat, so it's very, you know, interesting because I come at it from such a kind of art historical perspective that it's always refreshing to kind of get these thoughts from, you know, everyone who kind of sees the painting in a completely fresh manner. So let me share my screen and we will start, you know, and so I'm gonna, you know, start here. I just want to let you all see who the artist was physically, to introduce him to you, Giuseppe De Nittis. The photograph of him on the left side of the screen was from about 1877 when he was 31 years old. On the right is a self-portrait in pastel that he did the year before he died. This pastel dates from 1883. You know, he was an artist. He was born in Barletta, Italy, that is in the region of Puglia over on the Adriatic Sea side of Italy, in 1846, and he died young at the age of 38 from a stroke in 1884. So his career is very short, but it is packed with such marvelous works and changes over a very short time. And so the second person who's part of my talk today is his wife, Leontine. And you see her in this painting that's in the exhibition called Leontine in a Boat from 1874. I simply want to mention that De Nittis moved to Paris permanently to establish his career in Paris in 1868. And he met Leontine that year, and they married the following year. She was a model. She was French. And so, you know, she was his lifelong companion on this journey of his artistic career. This is such a beautiful work. It's in the exhibition, and it's not large, but I love the fact that our guest curator for the show, who's very well versed in all things De Nittis, has shared with me that De Nittis wrote about how Leontine was always nervous in a boat. And I think you get some sense of that here, how she's holding on to the sides. But compositionally, De Nittis is like using a very advanced idea about this kind of telescopic perspective and compositional ideas that are derived from Japanese art that he was very invested and interested in. And so I just want to kind of give you insight into the early part of his career, which is very invested in landscape painting. We open the exhibition when you arrive with this large work on the left of your screen called Approaching Storm. And De Nittis wrote about the importance of atmosphere, the atmospheric light, clouds, and this is how he phrased it. He said, "Nature, I am so close to her. I know the atmosphere well. I know all the colors, all the secrets of the air and the sky and their intimate nature. Oh, the sky. I have painted so many pictures, skies, skies only, and beautiful clouds." And this work on the left that's quite large, Approaching Storm, and you see that magnificent sky with the sunlight at the bottom, the sense of this storm right on the horizon, these clouds and the light shining through, and then what appears to be geese there in the center of that composition out in the field. So different from, this is an 1869 work on the left, that both of these works you're looking at were painted in southern Italy. And the one on the right is so much more experimental. We were so thrilled to be able to include it in the exhibition. It's called From the Top of the Coach. We're not sure the exact date, but we know that it is in the moment of 1872 to 75. So it is still in this kind of early part of his Paris career. But this telescoped road that races to the back of the horizon, deep into space, and he's placed us, you know, in the place where the person driving the carriage is seated. So it's an unusual perspective. But I look at this painting and I know from Renato's assurances that it's likely a summer picture, but it always looks very much like there is such reflective quality on this road that it could also be a kind of winter image. And so I bring to you a work that was discussed in the exhibition review that was in the Sunday Post on just this past Sunday, that Philip Kennicott, the reviewer, discussed this painting in detail. It's called The Road from Naples to Brindisi. It's an 1872 composition by De Nittis. And this road that goes across the country from the Mediterranean to the Adriatic Sea was something that was, you know, a really important road that linked both sides of Italy in this era of the 18th and 19th century. And so here we're looking towards the Mediterranean. But it is such a fascinating composition with this road again that spreads out in the very foreground and then moves to the distant horizon. And these two peasants that you see walking toward us on the left, and then this carriage on the right. Such a fascinating motif that he included, particularly because there is a figure that is entering I don't know if you can see my pointer, but he is either climbing into or just kind of climbing out of this carriage. It's just a kind of mysterious kind of motif that he's tucked into this really remarkable picture with this kind of intense, bright sunlight and this blue sky. And I compare it to these winter scenes that you see on the screen. De Nittis was very active in Paris, establishing his reputation in the 1870s. In fact, Degas invited him to participate in the first Impressionist exhibition in 1874. It is the same year that De Nittis also was exhibiting in the official salons. And ultimately, De Nittis chose to continue exhibiting with the salons rather than affiliating himself through these exhibitions being organized by the Impressionists. But he was very aware of what his French colleagues were doing. And these paintings that in French, they're called the effets de neige or snow effects, were a very popular subject that nearly all of the Impressionists did examples of, but Monet and Pissarro are probably the two that were most interested in the theme of effets de neige. And clearly there was some influence on De Nittis. The work you see on the left is very interesting. It's called Winter Landscape. It is from about 1880. It's very small. It's about the size of a sheet of paper because it's like 8.5 by 10.5 inches. And you know, you see this elevated perspective, you know, where we're up above looking down on this snowy garden or very kind of white field. And there is one figure in that space, and she is sweeping, you know, what we assume must be some kind of pathway in the garden. And, you know, it's thought that this is, you know, a Paris suburb because of this house on the other side of the garden spot. But clearly De Nittis probably painted it on the spot, en plein air, from a window in, you know, a building, you know, overlooking this space. And this kind of grayish blue cloudy sky. And I compare it to a work we have in the exhibition called Passing Trains, or Trains Passing, actually, from 1884. And, you know, this particular work, you know, I can't claim for certain that it was a winter landscape because it was done in these last months before De Nittis died in the summer of '84. But it seems so cold. This kind of blue-gray tonality, the trains that you see, you know, coming towards one another on the left side, and this kind of cold gray-blue sky. And we are also elevated, you know, in our perspective, looking down on it. It's very dramatic image that he has created for us here in the last months of his life. But this effet de neige, snow effect subject matter, was something that was absolutely so much a part and parcel of Monet's work in particular, also Pissarro's work. And I'm showing you here on the left, Monet's Snow Effect at Argenteuil from 1875 that was likely exhibited in the Fourth Impressionist show in 1879. And you can see very plainly, scholars have written about how the influence of Japanese ukiyo-e woodcut prints was very important to Monet in this composition. And at this time, Monet was very invested in collecting ukiyo-e prints. And so, this is a small town on the Seine River where near where Monet was living. And so like De Nittis, who was exploring this tension between the industrial world and the kind of modern era intruding upon this kind of pristine nature. You see, Monet is like exploring some of this as well in his snow thematic compositions. And it's very interesting because on the right is a painting by Monet that De Nittis purchased. De Nittis owned this picture on the right. It's called White Frost, dates from 1875. De Nittis purchased it from the 1876 Impressionist exhibition. And De Nittis was very much, he admired Monet's paintings. I think he was very cognizant of Monet's very experimental and inventive approach to composition. But it's so interesting that this one on the right has such a kind of coloristic palette of blues, yellows, and a little green. It's very different than this kind of frozen white world of the example on the left screen. But other artists in Paris who were working with the subject matter of the Effet de Neige include Renoir and a work in the Phillips collection by Alfred Sisley that you see on the right that is called Snow at Louveciennes. And Sisley's work is from 1874, but Renoir's work is from 1868. And it's called Skaters in the Bois de Boulogne. And Renoir did maybe 2 or 3 Effet de Neige because Renoir didn't necessarily like being outdoors working in snow and cold, unlike Monet, who was, and Pissarro, who were more than happy to kind of, be outdoors in challenging weather. And it was in the 1860s that this whole theme of the snow effect compositions really entered the world of Impressionist painting. And you see in Renoir's work on the left, he has this high vantage point, this kind of expansive city view. And the Bois de Boulogne, had created these official skating ponds that one of them constructed in 1866. And this one has been identified as the Lac de Patinage, the skating lake, that's in the western section of the Bois de Boulogne. And there's so many figures in this composition of Renoir's. And on the right, Sisley has given us, it's like this beautiful composition based upon geometry, but he inserts one single figure, a woman walking on the path toward us with her umbrella, on a day when it is snowing. So different concepts of what the Effet de Neige compositions could be. And so De Nittis, becomes very engaged in doing winter pictures as well. He bought a house right before the Franco-Prussian War in 1871. He bought a house that is on the Grand Avenue that connects the Arc de Triomphe with the Bois de Boulogne. It was after the Franco-Prussian War, it had the name of the Avenue de Bois de Boulogne, but today we know it as the Avenue Foch. And so you see on the right screen an image of Leontine, who was De Nittis's regular model for all of his imagery of attractive young women. You see her on this, pathway where you see these large townhouses behind her. And, you know, it's no doubt an image that was born of Leontine out, maybe skating or just walking here on the snow near where they lived. But one of the most interesting parts of this composition from my perspective is this kind of empty foreground that De Nittis has used in this composition. And Leontine is like in the middle ground, but she feels and appears to be even smaller than that in many ways. And these two little dogs that are out there to give a sense of her depth in space. And then, you know, these kind of very subtle footprints in the snow in front of us. But De Nittis does something very different with her in the painting on the left, which is from about 1875, which is called Leontine Skating. She's, you know, you can see the detail of the skate on her feet. You see the detail of her costume. And, you know, she's looking directly out at us, but she's really looking directly out at her husband who is painting her as she glides by, no doubt on, you know, one of these frozen lakes in the Bois de Boulogne. And it looks like it's like late afternoon because of that very subtly pink setting sun in the far distance. And you can see how, you know, from an art historical perspective, De Nittis is picking up ideas from Monet's with these kind of just little touches of black that he uses to suggest people in the distance. This was something that Monet had begun to use quite prominently in many of his works by the 1874, rather than describing them more completely. But there is a kind of cinematic quality to this work on the left. And there's a shift that, you know, we have, you know, we can see that's in De Nittis's work, especially in that work of Leontine with the cityscape of these fancy houses behind her, that De Nittis is very aware of Japanese art. And this is absolutely something that, you know, we have tried to kind of bring some of this into the exhibition, but I'm showing you here on the left a hanging silk painting by the artist, Japanese artist Watanabe Sete. This work dates from 1877. And when I say it is large, this scroll by itself, the painting is about 6 feet by 3.5 feet. But with the scroll itself, it's like 10 feet high. So if you go over to the National Museum of Asian Art, it's in the Freer building. And they do not have high enough ceilings to be able to show this entire hanging scroll with all of the silk on the top and the bottom of the painting. Because it is such a monumentally scaled work, it shows pigeons around a stone basin filled with water. It's called Pigeons at Sensoji, also known as the Asakusa Kannon Temple in Tokyo. Many of you may have actually been there in Tokyo. There is subtly in the background also a stone lantern that you can pick out. De Nittis bought this painting by Sete in 1878. He bought it out of the Universal Exposition in Paris, in which this work by Sete was being displayed. And he came to know Sete personally. And I just as comparative, Sete was known particularly for his paintings of birds and flowers and branches. And on the right is a ink and color work on silk that is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art called Egrets in a Tree. The dates from it about a decade later, but it gives you some sense of his incredible skill in using brush and sumi ink to create these very delicate effects that you see here on the right. And then these more kind of robust, dramatic effects of the branch and the delicacy with which he depicts the birds, just as he had the pigeons in the hanging scroll, and then this moonlit sky in the back. And so Sette came to Paris along with this painting of his to be displayed at the Paris exposition. And in the end, he stayed for 2 years rather than just the original 1 year, probably because he had the additional income from De Nittis buying this hanging scroll. But he displayed he was of such interest and very interested and willing to go and demonstrate his skills to the French artists, including Degas, Manet, also, of course, De Nittis. That De Nittis ultimately took painting lessons from Sette. He was very interested in studying composition and also the use of different brushes for his own work. So he took lessons from Sette. And one of the things that's so interesting about De Nittis is that unlike his French colleagues, whom we always think of as being interested primarily in the ukiyo-e prints, De Nittis was very passionate about Japanese painting, either on scrolls or on screens, and on textiles. And so he was a voracious collector of Japanese art. And so I'm just showing you here, this is a work from 1878. This is the same year that De Nittis bought that scroll by Sette. And this shows you something of De Nittis's, the interior of his townhouse. This is again, Leontine posing here in the foreground. You see this 6-panel screen in the back that is plants and flowers. See this painting of a crane, but you also see these ceramics that he had here in his home. Also this piece of furniture that's very Japanese. And when De Nittis was exposed to Japanese art for the first time when he went to Paris for his very short visit in 1867 at the time of a Universal Exposition in Paris, but more so, there were dealers who were selling Japanese work, ceramics, paintings, prints. And then in 1878, there's another Universal Exposition that has another opportunity to see Japanese painting and artwork. And when De Nittis died, I'm going to mention here, you know, he was such a kind of voracious and respected collector of Japanese art that the inventory of Japanese works in his home when he, after his death in 84, he owned 47 vases, 33 of them were bronze. He had 4 sculptures. He had 12 panels and 23 of these kakimonos, which are the hanging scrolls, plus many, many textiles. And so I just move on now to show you these 3 works are in the exhibition. On the left is this painting, a figure of a woman that again is Leontine. You can see these screens that have these Japanese motifs of the chrysanthemum that she's standing in front of. She's wearing this incredibly elegant costume, this jacket and her skirt. And I love the way she's like holding this umbrella. You can see this handle over here on her left side, our right, that is behind her. And then here, the 2 fans that we have in the exhibition also reveal De Nittis's very strong interest in using the fan format, just like his colleagues in Paris were doing, Degas, Manet, for example, and using Japanese motifs. You know, the one on the top is vine leaves, and it dates from about 1880 to 83. And then it's called Capricious Nocturnal, the one on the bottom. And you can see this moonlight on the water. And one of the things that's so interesting to think about is technique and what De Nittis may have been learning from Sete in terms of technique. But one of the things that was described by French critics at the time who observed Sete doing these demonstrations in 1878 was how he would hold two brushes in the same hand. One of the brushes would be very fine and held a lot of intense color that would be used to draw the line. And then there was a thicker brush with watery color that was used to widen the line and blur it. And so this was, you know, it was like a technique that makes you wonder how much De Nittis may have kind of experimented with that. And then we come to our painting that Aparna did such a beautiful job of leading us through today, the snow effect from about 1880. And I just want to mention, you know, maybe some of you have been around the Phillips long enough, like I have, but back in, I think it was 1999, we had an exhibition of Phillips called Effet de Neige that focused on the artwork by the French Impressionists that dealt with this theme. And we did a study in the back about what kind of weather every winter had. And the winter of 1879-80, especially in the months of November, December of 79, was very heavy snow throughout that those 2 months in particular. Very cold temperatures. There were frozen, the Seine River was frozen as it went through Paris, and then it started to break up in early January. So it makes me wonder if maybe this is from that moment in late 1879. This is Leontine, and it's so interesting. This composition is so inventive and so different than the French Impressionists. That it's really remarkable. And I think one of the things that is so dramatic about it, of course, is this bifurcation on a diagonal in which we have a very close-up view of the figure, and it's not clear where it is she's sitting. And then we have this empty space below her in which it's mostly white, but there are things that we can see that De Nittis has used to kind of give definition to what is in that empty whiteness. It's like she's sitting above the clouds. We see these birds that are very distinctively used to kind of create depth and space. This kind of hint of trees at the bottom here, and certainly trees over here behind her. I have assumed that this is in the Bois de Boulogne. It's in Paris. This is, you know, an opportunity, you know, that she was sitting somewhere, and De Nittis may have made a deliberate compositional decision to create this tension between near and far, and between stability and instability. And these different brush work that we can see is also quite beautiful. I keep hitting my mouse. Apologies for that. And this way that the umbrella is like upside down, pointing, as said, at her heart. And so where is he getting these ideas? He's getting a lot of these ideas from Japanese painting, from screens. This particular one is a 4-panel screen at the MFA Boston called Hawk Eagle in a Pine. And you can see this negative space. And the tree is here on the left. There's a diagonal where the landscape slopes down to this kind of emptiness. And the tree acts as what we call a repoussoir device. It's like something you see in the theater where you pull back the curtain, and that is in the foreground. And then you have this kind of jump into the background. And this is another Japanese painting, this one from the 17th century by the artist Kano Tanyu. This is called The Landscape of the Four Seasons. And this is the left panel. And you see, we're in winter, this kind of emptiness that is undefined. But over here on the far right, you see this flock of birds moving off into a kind of undefined world off the side of the composition of the this panel. And you see where De Nittis is picking up ideas and using them in his own fashion in this really remarkable painting from about 1880, The Snow Effect. And ukiyo-e prints also would likely have been in conversation with De Nittis's thinking as well. And I just show you 4 examples here. The one on the top left is by Hokusai. It has that tree that lives in the very foreground, branches heavily laden with snow, and then this kind of move into the distance with the gate here in the water. And then in the far distance with this, boat being an indicator of like how the depth. The other 3 examples on the screen are from the Japanese printmaker Uragawa Hiroshige, and they are from his series called 53 Stations of the Tokaido Road. Some of you may remember that back in 2005, we had the entire Tokaido Road series here at the Phillips Collection. But you can see the kind of dramatic way that Hiroshige creates a kind of foreground landscape element, and then this emptiness here, this kind of diagonal that is used to go and lead us into this part of the composition here, this winter scene, and then these kind of dramatic diagonal of this mountain pass. And so I just make mention of this and show you those because De Nittis was definitely using this inventive way of composing near and far in landscape in another remarkable work after The Snow Effect. And this one is from the summer of 1881. It's called Walking Along Lake Lucerne. And it's the most remarkable painting in so many ways. And it doesn't necessarily read as a lake. It just really reads as blue sky and clouds. And this pathway that just kind of, walks into the pine trees, but maybe we just drop off the edge of the earth if we get too close to that edge. And then this is my last slide because I wanted you to see Leontine once again. She's such a kind of important thread that goes throughout De Nittis's very short career. On the right is one of the last works that De Nittis painted, this Breakfast in the Garden that we have in our exhibition, that is Leontine and their son Jacques, who was 12 at the time, a summer scene. But this remarkable pastel on the left of Leontine was done in 1882, and it's called Winter Day. It's a pastel on canvas, and it's, we're talking a work that is like 5 feet tall and about 3.5 feet wide. So it's monumental, magisterial, if you will, almost life size, and traditional in the sense of, a woman, an elegant woman in an interior scene with a view out the window, but such a kind of interesting and beautiful depiction of snow built up on the inside of this window pane, this very kind of expressive brushwork to describe this tree outside the window. and this incredibly beautiful description of Leontine and her elegant dress and these the kind of subtlety that De Nittis has built into this is really quite extraordinary. And we wished we could have had something that could have had this work. And if you look closely, I can't bring it closer to you, but she has very thin gloves on her arms and on her fingers. It's just exquisite. And I'm going to end my spotlight now. And if Renato is still online, I'm sure that he would be happy to go and answer anyone's questions about the artist or any of these works. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was fascinating. And I too wish we could see that large pastel, that beautiful pastel of Leontine. I am sorry to say that we are out of time, and Renato had another meeting, I think right at 2. But I would like all of you wonderful participants to put a last question in the chat. What makes you most curious? What do you want to learn more about? And we can address some of these questions next week. I hope we'll be learning about Caillebotte and his relationship with De Nittis. So we can talk about some of these questions we've brought up today in this fascinating meditation and talk. Sue, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experience with us. Really interesting. So I'm sorry we have to end so soon without.
I always talk too long. What can I say?
There's so much to say. There's so much to say. Yeah. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody hanging in there today.
Yes, we do. And we have recorded, and we'll let you know when the recording is available so we can revisit this. Yes. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you. And we hope to see you next week.